thank you for such kind introductions. What good friends we have in the Passive House world, and wonderful to see everybody here this morning. We have a lot to share always, so I'll start this out with this continues a conversation some of us have had. This is a wonderful case study, and it's really nice to have our collaborators and partners on this project here. Of course, we were hired onto this project, so really, Kim at Baseline, thank you for being here, and thank you for collaborating with us. And Hammerwell, as the builder on this project, is also an incredible collaboration team. And we're going to talk about specifically this house, but what is happening here in Colorado. So I'm sitting in Louisville, Colorado. We're here today because we're going to do some live events during a live install. And so nice opportunity to be here with you and sort of let you guys peer into this project from far away. And then we'll be at the site later today. I'm going to try and share screen. How's that? So those who on the call have not heard about B.PUBLIC before, we are a standardized component system for offsite integration of high performance wood-based components for the primary structural envelope. This company was founded in 2019. As Mark mentioned, we are women owned. We are also a benefit corporation. That's where the B comes from. So we're looking at all sorts of solutions focused on new housing creation and designing the best possible performance for long term. In the rollout of this company, we came out of Jonah's practice. I'm going to turn it over to him to talk about the technical. But I think many of you who are really excited about Passive House and really want to see everyone building better for every project. B.PUBLIC is a system that's being offered widely for consideration early in a project, both on the performance and the costing side, so that all projects in that sort of low-rise housing form can consider this as a potential system. And in that system, there's 89 components. We offer wall, floor, and roof panels. Our wall panels are R35 and R52. Roof panels are R60 and R80. And then our fully insulated floor cassettes are an R51. So you'll see there are lots of ways to work with these panels, but that's sort of the base of what B.PUBLIC offers, in addition to design and consulting services to all projects, both direct to consumer and with our B2B clients, like on this one, for consideration and sort of speed to build in the design and in the install. So this project shows a lot of custom. I wanted to start here where we do have these 89 components that we kind of call our Lego systems for prefab. And Jonah's going to jump into this specific project here in Louisville. This is a rebuild project. We lost, I think, just over 1,000 homes here in Colorado with the Marshall Fire in December 2021. There's some incredible incentives being offered by Xcel Energy as well as the state for rebuilding better. And at the highest tier of that rebuild incentive from Xcel is Passive House certification, both through PHI and through FIAS, is giving homeowners $37,000 per home to rebuild to the standard. So this is a huge case study, not just in individual homes, but a whole community being able to have a choice to rebuild and the money to do it. So I will kick it over to Jonah. Glad you're all here.
Yeah, thank you, Edie. And you're going to be controlling our slides. All right. So again, just a big shout out to everybody involved. We're, we're just, one of the cogs in the wheel of the process. I mean, both from design, general contractors, subcontractors for install, as well as panel manufacturers. Like, I think some people might not know how B.PUBLIC works, but we're really focused on developing thermal envelope designs that meet the primary sort of factors for what we consider best construction practices. So thermally bridge free, vapor open, low embodied carbon materials, and increased thermal performance. So just to talk a little bit about our panels, we're around 65% by weight. Our assemblies are all around over 65% post-consumer recycled content in the form of cellulose. There's no steel in our assemblies. There's the wood that's there is about 90% in engineered wood, so using small wood, and then the remainder of it is 2x4 or 2x6. So really focused on sustainability when it comes to the assemblies. So this is the site itself on this project. There's expansive soil, so this foundation goes down around, probably around 10 feet on average, and goes down bases on bedrock or stable soils. And so it's a site framed floor. And it's really right on the edge of the green space here in Louisville, and then sort of nice density as it moves into the neighborhood. This area has really done a pretty good job of planning. It reminds me a lot of the Netherlands on how sort of planned a lot of spaces are, but very conscientious of green space and green belts adjacent to higher density. And you can see sort of the white skirting around that, the floor framing, that's our interior, or the air barrier. It's Intello that's coming up on the inside of the basement walls, and then it's wrapping up onto our deck to connect to our wall assembly. So we'll go into that in a little bit later.
And I'm going to jump in here, Joe, and
Yeah.
just say as I switch the slides, that this demonstrates some of the services that B.PUBLIC offers to our clients. And we're going to move into the offsite set that was produced for this. Oh, just kidding. First, we're going to go to the site. But demonstrating sort of the process of working with B.PUBLIC to get you through to the build process. And here we are on site. Was this yesterday?
Yeah, so just a little bit of orientation, I think, from that site built floor assembly to our components. Just a little bit of a reality check in this video so we can see what that looks like in the field, and then we can go back and see. There's Trevor, our subcontractor on the project. He's doing such a great job, and we're going to be doing some live feed from the site later today. Yeah. So this is an example of the assembly set, and one thing that's that B.PUBLIC has really taken on head on in our industry that's a little bit unusual, and especially in the residential sector, is that there's a new ICC code for offsite design and prefabrication standards. And it really, what it does is it was launched in 2022, I believe. But what it does is it sets standards for not how things are, this like structural codes or anything like that, but establishes standards for how offsite is communicated or delineated within a set of plans and so forth. And we find that really important, because if we're really focused on serving the builder, then those plans become the basis for a subcontract, say, right, for a bid and so on. And so the greater clarity we can have in those plans, the greater clarity and ease there is in bidding. And so therefore, that's more consistent outcome, both financially as business owners for those individuals that are implementing, and greater predictability and risk reduction for the client. And risk is always sort of the big, well, not always, but certainly in the last decade has been the big sort of factor around residential construction when we're talking about trying to do something new. and going into unknown. So B.PUBLIC's really focused on implementing those new codes around design standards and clarity. So this is an offsite set, which goes, it's part of the before it goes into our shop drawing production. This is what is reviewed for coordination against engineering and architecture. And you can see on here, one important thing is we're really focusing also on that clarity on our rough openings for windows and doors, because that's really what needs to be addressed earlier in on the process than would be normally the case when you're stick framing on site. Here's another example of just delineating what is being prefabricated offsite opposed to what is being provided on site by the local contractor. So the orange is all site provided structural elements. And so just again, for really focused on clarity and trying to bring a little bit more intuition or intuitive nature to the understanding of what can often be fairly complex in the background. So next slide. So here's an example of really, and I just want to say a big shout out and kudos to Collective Carpentry, who was our manufacturer on these panels. B.PUBLIC works with several different manufacturers, including we're manufacturing from our own facility in northern New Mexico, and these were manufactured by Collective Carpentry, and you'll see just really nice quality on these panels, and that always means the world to us. So again, we're one piece and in a fairly large wheel of the process. So and one thing that B.PUBLIC changed in our specifications just recently is we went to a fully adhered weather resistant barrier on the exterior. And it wraps all 5 sides except for the interior, where you can see the Intello and our service cavity is on the interior. But there's a part of that decision making was that trying to increase the sort of robustness of the panel construction for survival during install, right? As we increase accessibility to offsite and higher performing assemblies to greater range of areas and installers and installer experiences and so forth, we saw a lot of merit in beefing up the durability of the assemblies just in transport and storage and so forth. So that's really been really nice, and there's a lot of other advantages to that, going to a fully adhered assembly. And then over on the left side you can see, so just to sort of maybe step back a little bit, B.PUBLIC's assemblies are a dense pack cellulose insulation. In this case, these are R52 walls. So we've got 14 inches of dense pack cellulose installed to, you know, anywhere between 3.5 to probably 4.5 pounds per cubic foot. And then there's a dedicated service cavity on the inside that you can see is formed by those furring strips, the horizontal 2x, and so your interior finish gets applied directly to those. And so it's a single cavity assembly, totally vapor open, and so that's its approach, and it approaches the walls, roof, and floor assemblies all in that very sort of simple yet extremely robust approach. And one thing that's neat about B.PUBLIC is that, so we didn't invent any assemblies. We decided to really double down on existing knowledge around light wood frame construction and existing codes. So all of our assemblies are very intuitive to a builder. All of our products are, for the most part, I mean, with the exception of Proclima line of membranes and so forth, all of the woods and sheeting, they're all going to be available at your local lumber yard, which is really important. Again, when we're really focusing on accessibility and long-term resilience, we don't want to do anything that feels or that is precious or non-intuitive to our builders. So we're really focused on serving builders there. here, yeah, back up. So this is one thing, our detailing really focused on, again, if our, our primary sort of thermal envelope attributes that we're focused on is this dedicated air and vapor control layer, which is, of course, one of them. Then it's really looking at and consolidating our seams that need to be addressed after install. And this shows our therm study of our joint between two panels. And you can see that in the photo on the right. So that's a thermally bridge-free joint, which is pretty cool. I think I really like get a kick out of that. And so it then what we're really allowing to be focused on in the field is very limited in terms of its air sealing. It's very clear what needs to be done and what is already done. So there's two sort of primary joints on our wall assemblies that need to be addressed. And one thing that just the graphics down at the bottom, B.PUBLIC has all of our details available on our website or for download of our different assembly conditions, which really can help just a technical understanding of the assemblies. So you'll see in the next slide. So this is, we're using Tescon Vanna from Proclama for air sealing, both on the interior to the Intello, on all of our butt joints, inside corners, as well as for the weather barrier on the exterior. So all the air sealing can be done primarily with just one product, which is really nice. So there's anytime you can reduce your bill of materials on anything is beneficial. There's just less waste and greater cost savings. So one thing you can see, there's, in between the panels, it's designed to have like a small gap between like either an 1/8 inch or up to 3/16 designed into the panel spacing. And structurally that gap can get quite a bit larger, but if it gets too large, we're worrying about it being a thermal bridge. But that gap that you see there is not a thermal bridge. And you can see if we go to the next slide, you can see, so this is an illustration or showing a photograph of the edge of the panel. So each panel edge has about 1/8 of an inch at least of pillowing built into it. So those two panels are just coming together and those pillows are compressing. So that gap that you saw there, it's just going back to that 1.5 inches basically, that's right in the structural framing portion of it. And then it becomes a captive airspace on either side, just because they are getting taped on the weather barrier side and taped on the air barrier side as well. So it's really nice. I love this approach because it adds a lot of resilience to the assembly. We can have that gapping undulate based on what the project needs, or to adjust spacing accordingly, so it's not fragile. And so we have if there is a larger gap there, it can be tuck pointed with like with Havelock wool or something like that if needed. So next slide, please. So this is just the base of our walls and on for this project. And this project actually, the actual conditions are not reflected in either one of those therm details. But the B.PUBLIC does have therm details for both our prefabricated wall to our prefabricated floor, which is the therm detail on the left, as well as our prefabricated wall to an insulated slab with cold foundation. We really like that approach. It allows a very traditional stem wall spread footing approach to construction, and then that slab is just thermally broken from that stem wall. So it just really nice performance while maintaining very traditional construction techniques for the most part. And so in the pictures, you can see that's on the enclave project. That's the Intello coming from up the inside of the basement, and then wrapping around outside of plate, and then going on to plate, and it's connecting. It will be trimmed, and then our getting taped down to our walls will get taped down to the subfloor. So that Intello is just turning up on and gets connected and caulked down with a Proclaim material to that subfloor. So basically, top of subfloor is our airtightness layer underneath our walls, and then it quickly turns up and goes onto the interior of our assemblies. One thing I just want to make a note of, you can see in the picture sort of directly above our therm details, you can see a Simpson hold down strap there. And we'll go into this a little bit on another slide, but one of the innovative approaches that B.PUBLIC has is all of our structural connections between panels to existing stem or site-built components are all done through very standard Simpson ties and brackets. They're very affordable, very accessible, and they're all on the exterior of the panels even after total installation is complete. And so back to, we're talking about clarity and protecting both the builders and, for implementation and communication, making sure all those things are as bulletproof as possible, that all the structural connections are totally accessible and visible after prefab is totally complete. So your authority having jurisdiction can do that inspection if they want to. You can do a FaceTime call with a structural engineer and walk around the building. You can do a sign-off sheet from subcontractor to GC. There's lots of different ways to do it, but there's just really nice clarity there. And because we're dealing with a closed assembly, it's nice to bring that sort of visible accessibility to the primary structural component. So again, kind of a neat, simple approach that B.PUBLIC has developed. So here's just an illustration from exterior. Of course, our window bucks, WRB fully adhered wrapping all the way into the depth of that jamb. And then showing an interior sort of standard detail for us. For this is a standard wall panel that has a door opening in it on the right. And for almost all of our openings, less than 8 feet. We have lots of different options, but as standard openings less than 8 feet. We're doing a site applied interior site applied header. So, or sometimes the header, if it's part of a panel like this, it's being prefabricated and coming to the site. A lot of times too, that header can be just applied onto the interior, so that header is completely not interrupted, or it's not at all interrupting our thermal envelope. Just a really nice, sweet detail that instead of having to figure out, what is my thermal bridge with that header, or the difference if you're really coming down to it, this just allows that header to have absolutely no impact whatsoever in the overall thermal performance. And probably solid wood is a little bit better than an air gap, so it's probably even performing even better than otherwise. So you can see just sort of how we're approaching that from an interior furniture perspective. So next slide, please. So this project is using the Viking windows, and they're using the passive house Viking window assemblies, and this is not an actual assembly or not one of the actual units that's being installed here. We didn't have a sample of it in time for this presentation, but they look like really nice units. They're one of the first times that we're going to be seeing them go into a project. We're not installing that, and B.PUBLIC's really has sort of we don't specify what the windows and doors for what the projects that use our panels. We will make recommendations in terms of performance, and we have an awful lot of experience installing them in lots of different climates and conditions and styles, so we can provide guidance there. But that really is decision that's based on the architects or the passive house consultants. But one thing that, so B.PUBLIC has very sort of a nice, simple approach to providing a surround or a buck for that window, jamb, sill, and header detail. That's again all engineered wood. It's got 1.125" ply for that sill, and then it's got 3/4 inch ply on the jamb. That has that's so totally reducing all of our framing at that jamb while still really maintaining a lot of structural integrity and grip for window and door attachment. So it's pretty nice in that way. And so again, like we're really our assemblies, like when we're looking at trying to align your thermal performance of your window with the thermal performance of your wall assembly for B.PUBLIC, because it's the consistent R value across the whole section of the assembly, that would be in the middle of our assembly. But that's really at the discretion again of the architects and passive house consultants. Like there's lots of impacts for additional positive shading potentially. Like if you're pulling it back, it really just depends on the conditions that you're in. So typically B.PUBLIC will just be providing just the square opening, and then the window install will be typically going on a little setting block with flashing, like slope flashing to the exterior, and using like a self-healing waterproofing at that sill, going up over that set block, and then so it's just really protecting it and then providing enough slope away. And the Viking windows, it's pretty interesting. There's I think some of the older school European units were providing for over insulation on the exterior, and we're seeing more and more units like Viking that's actually allowing more over insulation on the interior, which is, I think, kind of cool and makes a lot of sense. A little bit more aligned with North American window detailing and operation as well, which is kind of cool. So here's an example of the brackets that are most commonly specified for our components, like as attachment. And again, we've done lots of projects in extremely high seismic areas and engineered for 140-mile-an-hour winds and so forth. And those haven't, for the most part, impacted our panel design, though we do have some panels that are what we call like our high capacity shear panels, where we have additional framing in them in order to gauge with our structural hold downs. But for the most part, what is augmented on our structurally is like the call outs for these brackets or the type of bracket. So both of these are Simpson, the Simpson LTP 4s or 5s and the A34s. If you guys know these brackets, they're less than 65 cents a piece. They're like, so just a very common and easy to implement in that way. So and this is kind of the information that would be specified in the construction documents that's engineered as well. So just an example of these are shear transfer brackets, basically. Next slide. So modern bones for next gen homes. It's really fairly straightforward. Our assemblies, we didn't invent anything. We've just optimized what existing industry and materials are out there based on these are the things that are most important. It needs to be really sustainable. It needs to last a really long time, and it needs to have really high performance. So when you follow physics and make decisions based on physics, this is really what you come to. So we didn't invent anything. We're just optimizing with what we've got. So, thanks so much. Come on, Edie, you've got to say something. Somebody's
I was going to roll the video again. Jonah, that was dynamite. Really, that's a lot of information, and thank you for flying through it so beautifully. And thank you to Kim and our wonderful clients for letting us share this project and walk through, a lot of your details and how you're utilizing B.PUBLIC. This group of architects and builders that we're working with specifically here in Colorado around the Marshall rebuild represent a really interesting step for B.PUBLIC. This is a cohort of architects that are new to certainly B.PUBLIC, but also new to Passive House. And so for each of these integrated teams, and I think for a lot of us who hang out here at the Passive House Accelerator, the idea of these integrated teams is very natural and commonplace in commercial, right? In these large Passive House projects. But what it means for homeowners to bring together a team and hire all of us to make this project possible and collaborate, certainly for performance, but also speed to build. When you're walking and driving through these neighborhoods, there's so much construction happening. And for some of the construction geeks on the call, some of it's painful, but it is getting rebuilt. And so like how quickly we've been able to bring in, I think 6 new studios, architects who are now working with B.PUBLIC for upcoming projects coming up in this area is, an incredible test to what we've developed and why we developed it. This really is a tool for architects, designers, and builders for fast adoption. And I know we try and talk about it being fast and easy and all that, but we know that all of this is deeply complex, and at the heart of it is this collaboration and the intent to get the best possible outcome for our clients. Kim, do you want to jump in and say hi? I think it'd be nice.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that presentation. I mean, even being on the team and part of it, it's super interesting to sit here and hear it from your perspective and hear all the technical parts. So thanks, Jonah and Edie. I agree so much. I mean, like the others, this is our first Passive House, certified Passive House. So we've always been super interested in high performance building and building science, but never worked with B.PUBLIC and never done certified Passive House. So it's been a really great experience. Certainly the team is half the battle, if not 90% of the battle, right? Like having the clients that we have that from day one, we're like, here's what we're doing it right. The whole process, they've been outspoken and wanting to share. And I think that's super huge, because as much as we all on the call know a certain amount, like we're coming up against clients who got forced into this because their houses burned down. So not people who ever planned to do a custom rebuild. So don't know anything about it, and it's scary and unknown. And so I think that this sort of education about it, and kind of the more we can all get out there and just share that, hey, this is actually easy, simple. Well, maybe I should take back easy, relatively simple, and just educate them is super important. So happy to answer any other questions, but it's really great to hear these types of educational forums.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim. It's been a pleasure working with you guys. It's been really nice.
And I think for a lot of people in this community, I hear a lot of people talking about like, how do we sell this? How do we convince clients to do this? I think we're really fortunate to have clients who have done a tremendous amount of research and have sought out teams that can achieve that and have very high principles for what they want. And I don't know if that's always true in the industry, but certainly B.PUBLIC is very fortunate to have people coming to us who have, are in their own sense building geeks and have done so much research that they jump in and they're demanding more of the details from us than they really want to know. And I know that's a very, privileged position for us to be in, that people know and that they're seeking out building better or Passive House or low energy or, decarbonizing their homes. And I do think we've worked in Santa Cruz, California, with some homeowners from the CZU fire as well. There's a perspective shift, I think, when people have been a victim to a climate disaster, and they come to the project differently with more intent. And certainly we know that the dollars that Excel is offering, better code, better mandates in these municipalities makes a huge difference, but it's also that people believe that they can make a difference for their own health and for the health of the planet, which is so powerful. I mean, it really is powerful to help these people back.
I'd love to hear questions that people have too, or anybody like.
One second before we roll into questions, I want to thank Edie and Jonah for kicking this off in such an inspirational way. When we go through travesties and large situations like this in our communities, it's so great to know that tried and true results are being delivered. These trainings are supporting it. And we saw firsthand how sweet it was that the folks on site had everything prepared, that the truck came in, the truck got unloaded, the panels got installed. We're walking through the process of assembly, rebuilding at a quality level to keep everyone cozy and comfortable. It's incredible. This shows collaboration. This shows heart and head working together. And let's hear from more of our collaborators now.
Hi, I'd like to give a big thank you to the fine organizations that make our work at Passive House Accelerator possible. First, a big shout out to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thank you too to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel, Minutair, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. And thank you to our champion sponsors, Bewiso, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, Proseco, and Source 2050. And thank you to our patron sponsors, Brennan, Coltraco Ultrasonics, Euroline Windows, Holstrom System, Inotech Windows and Doors, Lamelux, Owens Corning, RDH Building Science, Sanderson Sustainable Design, and US Engineered Wood T-Stud. Thank you, sponsors.
And I also just want to thank two brand new champion sponsors as well, PH Air Seal and Gradient Comfort. We really appreciate that they've joined the group of folks who are supporting our work. Thanks.
Well, excellent. We got some new people to research. Great stuff, Zach. And again, thanks for all the sponsors for participating and helping out grow and accelerate the Passive House movement with the Passive House Accelerator. So thank you very much. Let's dive into questions. And Bruce Fleming Smith, you are number one in the question queue. Bruce, you still with us? Three.
It looks like he's here, but he's muted. And maybe just, there we go.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm sorry, I actually forgot. I asked a couple questions and I'm not sure which one it was, but I know the first one was just how easy it is to adopt your system to high seismic zone areas. And you did, there was a bit of an answer there that seemed to assure that it's not an issue. Do you have any particular challenges if the seismic loading or the design configuration is somewhat more demanding of a more robust seismic reinforcement? Are you able to accommodate those those cases?
We are from a region perspective. We cannot say that we could achieve your design in it's the design of a building that has the biggest impact to to seismic resistance. So, but we have done multi-family or multi-story projects, fairly asymmetrical designs, including multi-family from an engineering perspective anyway. And handled that just fine. So we don't have an issue there, but if you don't have any seismic resistance in the thermal envelope, like if it's all glass on the first floor and so forth, then that'll be sort of issues for your engineer more than for B.PUBLIC. But and one thing that's a little bit and like, again, just a big shout out for just both MyTech and Simpson for this, but you saw on the one slide that we're using most cases, we're using cast in place hold downs. And some of that seems to be really great, very simple, very straightforward, and just sort of nicely delineates the scopes of work there too. So the answer is yes, we have not had a project yet that we were not able to address the seismic resistance.
Beautiful. Our next question up is from Ben Station. Ben, are you with us? Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
I actually, my question was immediately answered, I think, within the presentation. I guess what I would say is it's a mark of a really, really excellent presentation that so few people actually have questions, because everything was really, really clear and well put together. I just was asking a little bit about the therm modeling though, and if that was just the regular free version of therm that you guys use to do that modeling. Like, can I accomplish those same type of models with the free online version?
Thanks, Ben, and thanks for the compliment on the presentation. All of our therm modeling is done by a third party. So hoping it's not our in-house expertise. So all of that modeling is done by third party, and I think I do not believe it's the free version of it. I think that those are done in Flixet, I think, also, just to be specific.
By Oros Group. Oros
Yeah.
Group did that work for us.
Mhm.
Can I jump in and make Charlotte say hello? Because our other co-founder is here. All three of us are here, and
Yes,
she
please.
she likes to hide. There she is.
Here. Yeah, it's great to see everyone. And Jonah, you're amazing. Edie, you're amazing. I'm so glad you're the one talking. Thank you.
Charlotte is very modest. I got to speak with her at the New York Passive House Conference, what, 3 years ago now? Has it been that long?
Yeah.
And yeah, you are amazing, Charlotte. And I
Aw.
can't even imagine how much
Thank you.
your work has changed since we spoke then.
That's
What do
very
you
sweet.
what do you find to be the biggest difference in working with the Marshall firehouses as opposed to your clients prior to that?
I mean, I think the biggest difference is that we are working primarily with the same general contractor, Hammerwell. And so it is really helping to have repeated work, the same relationship, and which is especially important because all the projects are designed by different architects. So to have a continuity in the building is really wonderful. And in terms of because we have already built 3 houses in the fire area in Santa Cruz, California, we've already had that experience, and it's dealing also, really with people who went through trauma. So there is something that I do most of the project management, and I talk a lot to clients. And that's something that is very different from working with someone who is building their second home somewhere and has time to do that. So that's what I would say about it.
Fantastic. I'm sure we all have about 40 more questions for you now that you've shared that. I know I do. But I'm going to put it on hold so that we can, and not jump the queue, so we can get to everyone's questions. Who's up next, Sean?
We've got Graham, but I think, Charlotte also is like the counselor. So many roles that she has, quiet but mighty, I'll say. And again, thanks, Charlotte, for joining on. We appreciate having you here because, again, you're definitely part of the team and you do amazing work. And I'm glad that you get to feel all the love that B.PUBLIC gets, and you're part of it. So that's great stuff. We have Graham Irwin, who was the guest last week. So excellent Graham's presentation. If you missed it, check it out. It's on the Passive Accelerator YouTube. But Graham, turn it over to you.
Graham, you got to make it a hard one, okay? Don't give me that easy stuff. You got to really, come on.
I'm going to butter you up first, though. And I want to say, Edie and Jonah, amazing presentation. And Charlotte, thanks for all you're doing, and all the rest of the B.PUBLIC people that aren't here. It's incredible. And I'm going to add my reaction at looking at the job site photos. Like, my emotional reaction was just like calm, clarity, serenity. And I know how hard it is. And I'm just talking about like looking at how the thing's put together, how hard it is to get things to be that clear and straightforward. So, you know, that's amazing. My question to you is probably, I know it's very easy because you've got all the details worked out, but it was a visual reaction to seeing you had a slide with the rough openings and the panels were there, but the seams weren't taped, and the service cavity furring strip, it's a very specific question, but an easy one. The service cavity strip along the top spanned the gap. And so I was wondering how.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Yeah. And
Is it
only
not
that kind of
hard, though,
question
right?
from an experienced practitioner would have is, how am I going to get tape behind that 2x, right? Like, and so and that's so funny, Graham. When I was putting that slide on this morning, I was like, I bet somebody's going to notice that 2x is like continuous. And so that actually is just a temporary like holding that's aligning, and it actually, that wall goes up 20 feet. So there's actually 2 more courses of walls that go above that. And so that's just temporary alignment blocking for that. And but that what you actually, like in that case, it was right at our plate, but typically, and we could go back to that slide, but typically the bracing would go right on the horizontal furring strip. So there's actually like a little tunnel still allowed so that bracing could sit there, because it's 1.5 inches off of the wall. So that you could leave that bracing there. Because ultimately what we want to do from a sequencing perspective is that you tack the panels in place using timber screws, and you're happy with it, and it's braced still at that point. Then all the seams are taped, and then your Simpson ties go on that. So that's an important part of our training at builder orientation and so forth, is understanding that sequencing so they can, stay out of their own way, right? And if you know that you're going to have to be taping that, then you can be putting blocking in places that you don't have to remove it and then replace it again. Like, because you can imagine that's kind of the difference between it's just like it's the 6th day of install. It'll save you a day if you can just sort of really imagine that ahead of time. And usually that comes with experience as much as anything. But it's a really good question. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I knew you had the answer.
Yeah, we don't air seal that seam. No.
Yeah. Only a qualified eye could have spotted that detail. Thanks for paying attention there, Graham. And before I just send it over to Kevin, just again, big announcement. If you loved what Jonah and Edie are up to, they will be back this afternoon. They're going live 2 p.m. Mountain Time. So check that out. Hopefully we can find that link and throw it into the chat. Kevin, what do you think of the presentation?
I thought it was great. The air sealing details are top notch. The floppy bit at the bottom, base plate connecting the basement to the inside, really sweet details. A lot of thought put into all the air tightness. My one question was, what's the site plan, or do you plan for this project, or generally when do you run your first blow a door?
That's a really great question. As soon as possible would be and there's a couple different options, and it really depends, Kevin. We talk about this in our training quite a bit. Again, we do a lot of training on contract management for subcontractors, trying to uptrain framing subcontractors to move into passive house builders, basically. So it really depends on are they under contract for providing the air sealing, right? Would be one. Like, are they just doing the prefab install, and then maybe there's an air boss that's coming in that's doing the window install and then the air sealing on everything. So, but and so it really depends on the contract. But so that the first but the first would be if the windows are in place, or if they're, you know, not 3 months out or something like that, go ahead and install those windows and seal off the building, and then do your blower door test at that point. So that would be the first one. And I guess if the windows aren't able to be there, say that the installer is under contract to provide an airtight building, then it would be temporary sealing off those windows of those openings, and then doing blower door test at that point too. So one thing that we didn't really talk about, but that our assemblies are really designed to have multiple captive, very distinct multiple captive airspaces in the assembly. So even when, if we have like a gap in our air barrier, on our dedicated air barrier on one side, because the fully adhered weather barrier is going around all 5 sides of the rest of it, that air leakage isn't then able to transmit to, you know, very far distance to the other assembly. So in, like Ram was talking about, that the top of our wall plate was at 10 feet. That wall is going to get 2 more walls on top of it. Each one of those junctions between those plates are going to have 2 layers of adhero between each one of them. So talk about like thermal bypass, prevention to the nth degree. It really does bring a lot more robustness to the long-term performance of our dedicated airtightness layers, is what we found. Because after 14 years of designing and building and living in passive houses, that's what we see is the weakest link, is a slow decay in airtightness, either through remodeling or shrinkage or something like that. So we've really found that that's a really important focus to sort of increase the long-term performance of it.
Can I just comment that right now we are projecting out a 0.3 ACH based off of our current modeling, and if we meet that, then our KBTUs will be 2.75.
This is Mark Attard which is our project manager with Hammerwell on the Enclave project. So big shout out to him.
Great job, Mark. And thanks for joining us today. Again, it's so nice to have like the full group of friends gathered that are doing such an amazing job on, again, amazing area of the US that needs a lot of help. And the fact that you've got a lot of smart people together working between Kim and Mark, and again, the B.PUBLIC Prefab team, it's exceptional. So great stuff. And again, I saw Yan there too. So love to see the collective carpentry panels and the crew there to, again, scale up and develop, because I think this last stat I saw was 1,084 houses need to be replaced. And if we get a good portion of them in passive house, we are definitely doing a great job. And Mark put in there, it's 2 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Mountain time on IG Live is today's event. So again, no, Zach?
It's 2 p.m. Mountain time is the IG Live. 3 p.m. Mountain time is the Hammerwell and CGBG Hard Hat Tour.
There we go. So just so we're all aware of the right times, again, this is where we all work as a team.
And in 2 p.m., like with that live stream too, we're hoping that we'll have one of the Viking window install details mocked up a little bit too, so we'll be able to cover some of that, which will be nice. And we'll also have the installer for that project, who's also a B.PUBLIC trained installer. So it's really neat to start sort of developing that base for all of this info. Really nice.
Okay, well, what I do know that's happening is we have just finished the first hour of our event, and we are now diving into the final 15, where we will fire through as many questions as we can to ensure that everyone got a great opportunity to ask you guys questions. But as Graham said, there's probably not a lot because there's such a detailed presentation. So Shannon, who is up next?
We have Dan Schumacher up next, if he's still with us, and I will take a quick look in the participants to see if he is. It looks like he's there. Dan, you want to unmute and ask your question? If not, I can ask it for you. Oh, hi, welcome.
Yeah, the question was whether or not Jason included those thumbnail photographs, those detailed photographs in his construction documents, and whether or not he actually would show his video to anybody who's looking to build a building with him.
Perfect, thank you.
By Jason, you mean Jonah, which is my brother's name, so I'll answer to it either way. Like Jason works either way. Then the answer to the first part of that is that no, those details actually do not go on the construction set. The engineer has standard details that go on, and that's where they specify those finals. But those details are all available for download on the B.PUBLIC website just for reference files. And it's just, they're helpful because it shows a little bit of context for the assemblies. And, you know, anytime you're dealing with a dedicated service cavity and things like that, or a wall that's 14 inches thick, it's just a little bit unintuitive at first. And so it's nice to have those details. The second answer, I think Edie would be the best one to answer this, and you can link to the site and schedule it follow up as well, but we're more than happy to provide presentations on any of our material to offices or to authorities having jurisdictions or passive house groups. We've really found that education is one of the most important things to this movement, period. So.
Yeah, I do think that the accelerator is going to post this video. So, you know, feel free to share with anyone. And I'll just reiterate what Jonah says about education and onboarding. We spend a lot of time just bringing people into understanding, and there's a flight overhead. Sorry about that. That it isn't sort of one and done to understand B.PUBLIC, that we understand that this is a fairly high touch relationship with all of you in terms of consideration for projects, understanding how to utilize our tools, all of that. So we do in-person and online sort of tech training. You can go onto our contact page and you can schedule into, we usually have at least once a week, sort of an open Zoom that's a tech onboarding, which is nice, keeping it sort of under 5 professionals so that everyone can benefit from the questions. When you bring a set of plans with you to a meeting and you're able to share on screen, everyone benefits from those questions, just like today. And, you know, fortunately with, you know, sort of the state of COVID, we are doing in person and doing more sort of traditional lunch and learns and AIA and Home Builders Association meetings to bring larger groups into sort of the general information, and then narrowing down on your plans, on your detailed questions, to get you kind of all the way through this process. So there are lots of ways to interact with us, and it's not robots, it's real people who care about your projects and want to support those details. You know, we'll talk ventilation rates and windows and all sorts of things. It is sort of full sustainability and sort of collaboration.
Are the full human condition. Edie, ever since the first time we met, and I've seen you on multiple venues online and in person, you connect right away at that human level because you can speak so many different languages. You speak builder, you speak designer, you speak manufacturer, but you also speak human. You speak the residents' language, and you can put it into plain language and meet them where they are, where it matters most to them. And that's the key piece here, is we're building better buildings for people who need them most. And I love to see you guys excelling in a space that is really in need. And I applaud everything you did today. Fantastic presentation. And I'm just thrilled to see the success growing so quickly. So I think we got another question here. Let's just check
From
out
Ian.
our chat. From Ian? Great.
Which Ian it was, but
Hi, it's
Hi.
Ian Small. How you doing, guys? Sorry, I'm driving, so I'm hopefully you can hear okay. My question's a little bit complicated, but essentially, I don't think you showed the attic trusses, the flat roof part of an attic where you'd have truss roof on top. But I'm just wondering if you've managed to get that without doubling up on the horizontal trusses in between panels.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Yeah, there's a couple different ways to do it. We can either have prefabricated sloped roof panels that are, going down a ridge beam, or you can do sort of, I think what you were talking about is like a low slope or a flat insulated unvented roof assembly with overframing, either one of those. We saw, pre-COVID, we saw lumber prices were to the point that overframing really made a lot of sense. But we saw post-COVID, that's really reversed. And we've really sort of dived into standardizing our sloped roof panels. So there's still unvented roof assemblies, which we find to be